So I finally did it. I got my hands on a PS5. And that means that I got the opportunity to play Rift Apart. I did so and I loved the game. Sure, there are a few missed opportunities in my opinion, but most of all, the feeling of this game is great to me. So I did play this game twice beforehand. One time on the hardest difficulty and one time on challenge mode. So the game is fresh in my mind. But how I play the game is going to change substantially. Because we are going to play this game with the ranch only as well. And since I have failed some ranch only runs because I tried them on the hardest difficulty before, this time let's try it on resistant leader difficulty, which is equivalent of hard but not veteran. Let's see if we are able to do this. This is my journey of answering the question, can you beat Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart with only the wrench? Okay, so let's talk about how the wrench works in this game, because it works a little differently than it did before. You probably know that Ratchet is not the only playable character in this game. No, we also play as Rivet. And Rivet has a hammer as her melee attack. For our purposes, this counts as a wrench. But there is a noticeable difference, which I will get into shortly. Certain levels are played as Ratchet, whereas some levels are played as Rivet. If we had the ability to swap, that would be excellent, but unfortunately, no. But with this, the game does look doable. One final thing to note is that with both characters, if you press the melee button once, Ratchet and Rivet will attack 3 consecutive times like you're seeing right here. That can really throw off your plan of movement. Anyway, we have to deal with that. So with that out of the way, you have seen us get through Megalopolis. What a weird name. Anyway, one thing to note here is that in the first time you encounter Miss Zircon, you have to buy a weapon. Of course we're not gonna use it, but still. She doesn't let us leave her store without buying something. We buy the Enforcer and store it away, never to be seen from or heard of again. Now the first big hurdle of the run is defeating Dr. Nefarious. Feels weird to be battling him at level 1, but I love it. I mean, the boss fight itself is not really special, but we have to fight Dr. Nefarious in level 1. He has a handful of attacks that he uses, and it is really doable to negate his shots. I can't really speak about strategy here actually. The only strategy I used is to keep jumping forward and throw my wrench to hit him, and only open the health box here if it can restore 6 to 8 health, which is the same as 2 hits onto you. That way, you make the most out of your health bar. Now I did die twice. The first time I died, I already came close to beating him, but a few mistakes with small enemies Nefarious spawns in every now and then made sure that I had just 2 little lives remaining. My second try went much smoother. Of course I'm going to win, right? Well, yeah, but no. I fell off the map. I really like ranch only runs, but this is my 4th one so far, and I have come to know that I really dislike boss fights where you can only damage a boss when you have to jump forward. And I mean jump forward off your platform and then throw the wrench to get a hit in. That makes sure you are at the risk of losing your attempt, no matter how good or bad the attempt is going, with every hit. However, this early game fight is really doable, and of course, we will beat Dr. Nefarious on our 3rd try. Ratchet's entire trip to a new Nefarious city is not hard at all. Although the one thing I should mention is fighting the Nefarious Juggernaut. We are going to fight a lot of these guys in the run, and in some occasions they can be a problem, but most times they are just regular enemies with increased health. Like here, we teleport to Savali, and I found out that when I hyperstrike the Juggernaut, they will sometimes only use the slam down attack. Now when hyperstriking, you have to time it right, and you can't do this without taking a single hit. Of course I did take damage because I wanted to go fast, but you can. This is a great example where careful movement can really help you. My advice is to start training to be evasive. When you keep jumping, phantom dashing and running around, you become very hard to shoot. And in later levels this can really help you. Because this is my 3rd run in a row, I already had some practice with this. And now let's put that practice to the real test. A great way to start your training is on planet Sargasso, where we take control over Rivet for the first time. Now like I said before, Rivet uses a hammer, which behaves quite differently than Ratchet's wrench. For example, the wrench is better at close quarters in my opinion. You can throw the wrench as you have seen, but for close melee combat I usually prefer the wrench. Not that I have a choice, but still. Rivet's hammer is better at somewhat of a distance. She can throw the hammer quite a bit further than Ratchet can throw his wrench. But you do have to be more precise. The wrench can be forgiving. If you aim slightly off, the wrench has a larger hitbox to still hit enemies to do damage. The hammer, however, can do damage at more distance, but the trade-off here is that you have to be accurate. You won't really notice the difference in your average fight, but in niche situations the extra range on the hammer really comes in handy. And Sargasso offers two of those niche spots. The first spot is when fighting this Grunt Thor. And the reason he's kind of a problem is because the moves he uses and the many one-hit KO enemies that roam here. The most dangerous combination the Grunt Thor can use is to run at you and then bite you. You can try to run away, but sometimes you run into extra enemies. The Phantom Dash really helps you to get out of his running path. Now the extra range of the hammer does help quite a bit here, because the Grunt Thor can reach quite a bit forward to bite you. And because of the additional range of the hammer, you can keep somewhat of a distance. So yeah, I did die a few times, but Rivet sure was better at fighting a Grunt Thor than I would believe Ratchet was in Tools of Destruction. Anyway, the second part the extra range is really helpful is when fighting the Seekerpede. I mean, it's still going to take a while, but you can move way more freely because you don't have to worry as much about getting to your target with the hammer. And don't get me wrong, you're still going to miss a lot. That is because if you think you can hit the Seekerpede too low, that makes you miss it. His body is further away than his head. So if you think you can hit the Seekerpede too low, that makes you miss it, because even the hammer can't make that distance. Anyway, if you have practiced your evasiveness like I mentioned before, you really should be able to defeat him first or second try. Let's fast forward to Zerkys Battleplex, because man, we have to talk about this. For some reason, this level is a real outlier in the terms of difficulty. And I thought that the difficulty is increasing, but once I made it past this level, the game became a lot easier again. So I don't know what's up with the idea behind this, but when fighting with only a hammer, this is going to be a real challenge. And I think it's kinda hard to say really, but I think it has something to do with the amount of enemies. A lot of one-hit KO enemies enter the arena. That means that it's really hard to divide your attention. So when you are attacking a pirate, it's very common that a small enemy attacks you from the back or from your side. Evasiveness is again going to be the strategy here. Oh, and use the Phantom Dash as much as possible. Because the Phantom Dash makes you immune for like half a second while Rivet or Ratchet gets out of a line of sight. And that's great. The problem here, however, is that when the small droids attack, they get a boost forward for about 2 meters. And that really caught me off guard a few times when initiating my strategy. So yeah, this part is actually really hard, but I knew I could make it. There are 5 waves and I usually died in wave 4 or early wave 5. So with a little perseverance, evasiveness and a little luck, I did get past this part. But don't get your hopes up, because then the real hard part starts. Fighting Francois. And he is a real pain to take out. My estimate is that he is a 75 hit KO, which is okay. Quite average for your Ratchet and Clank mini boss fight. But the difficulty lies again in the amount of shit that is happening on screen. Don't get me wrong, it looks amazing, but everywhere something dangerous happens. Of course, Francois attacks you, and depending on the distance he is away from you, he can do all sorts of attacks. Running away will sometimes help you, but he can jump quite far and he will catch up to you in no time. The second thing you may have noticed that is a problem are the fiery pits. Because you have to move a lot and evade Francois' attacks, sometimes you get unlucky and fire unleashes from below you. But the third thing is the most difficult. These droids again. Man, I'm starting to see a pattern here. I've noticed that small one-hit KO enemies are a real threat in this game when fighting bigger enemies. And see, this is one of those downsides of using the hammer. When you throw the wrench, it can usually get 2 small enemies with 1 wrench throw because of the seemingly higher hitbox. The hammer, however, can only get 1 because of the preciser accuracy. And if you have 6 or 7 enemies roaming around you, sooner or later, they will get successful hits onto you. So, how is this going to work? Well, the same strategy as before applies here. Be as evasive as possible. This will make sure the one-hit KO enemies will most likely get confused and hit you less. Especially if you evade attacks with the Phantom Dash. This is a classic example of you can do it. It's just going to take a bit of time and practice. You know, a rule that has applied in many of my challenges on the channel here. The next part worth mentioning is this part, where Kit is going to hack a relay station on Savali and you have to defend her. In my previous runs, I thought that this part was quite hard. But since this is my third run, I have pretty much mastered the movement at this point. We don't want the enemies to come too close. So we are going to push them away as much as possible, but focus our fire on the far side. That way, enemies get spawn killed. Sometimes one or two break through, meaning you have to reshift your focus to the front lines. And that is actually pretty doable. The annoying part in this section is when a gunship tries to attack Kit. Battling as Rivet here would be better because of the extra range, but it's still really doable. It just takes a lot longer. When we have freed all monks and make our way up to the walking tower, we fight two Nefarious juggernauts. And I'm not gonna lie, this can be quite difficult. I think I did it in 9 tries. At one point I had a run where I accidentally pushed one of them off the tower, making the rest really easy. But I was still figuring out strategies and failed nonetheless. I think the best way is to copy the Francois strategy. I will skip over Blizzard Prime, Turn 4 and Cordelian. Seriously, nothing noteworthy happens here. If I have to name situations, that will be the pirate attack with the not so wee Rogers in the back, which is irritating because you cannot pay attention to him, but he will still snipe you. And on Cordelian there is an amoeboid infestation, which took me 3 tries. But seriously, master the hover boots, use Phantom Dash slot, pick your targets carefully and you should be fine. It does get a little bit harder on Ardolis, but I'd say that's way more fun. I quickly want to mention how much fun I had while traversing this room. In my Tools of Destruction run, I had to use a very obscure strategy of throwing my wrench, running to the left or right and hoping the wrench hits the back of the enemies that are holding shields. That and having to run back and forth to expose the backs of them to shooting pirates where they could take damage from. But this time, it was different. I keep on throwing my wrench and hyperstriking. There is some challenge, but I can really rush right through. The smile on my face was big while doing this. Now I will talk about returning to Planet Sargasso. The invasion makes sure there are multiple enemies everywhere, making this part quite challenging, but I needed that. So bring it on. The hardest part is the combination of enemies. Some enemies snipe you from the back, some will follow you, there will be juggernauts and the occasional Grunt Thor, and while battling all these guys, many one-hit KOs enemies will get hits onto you. My advice would be to pick your targets and take them out one by one. Or when standing in really close non-corona proof groups, hyperstriking them so they all receive damage. You can backtrack a big portion of the level for additional lives, but that does take time. And we want to go fast because, well, why not? But if you thought I had it too easy until now and the hard parts are over, I am happy to disappoint you, because we are going to return to Savali. We fight a truly original plot point, undead versions of the same enemy types, but fighting the undead Grunt Thor, that's where I panicked. And you must be asking yourself why, you've taken out many Grunt Thors up until this point, right? Well, yes, correct, but it's not just the Grunt Thor that's a problem. No, the problem is the combination between Grunt Thor attacks and having to dodge other enemies again. See, the Grunt Thor does quite a bit of damage onto you most of the time. And it likes to bite you. And by now I have it down to science of where I can stand safely and when I'm in biting range. But measuring this cost me very much time. And I would take much damage from this. But he can use 2 more attacks. The second one is that he gets a rock from the ground and throws it onto you. You really have to time your Phantom Dash while he does this. And the same applies for his third attack. He can randomly decide to just run towards you. And if you are focusing on something else, he will hit you for more damage. But listen, focusing on something else is really necessary. Because like I said, the difficulty is the combination of Grunt Thor attacks and having to dodge the enemies. Now after battling again and again, I found something out. With the Grunt Thor, a wave of meleeers spawn in. Now at first I thought they just kept on coming, so for the first half an hour of battling the Grunt Thor, I barely touched the enemies. But I found out that they can actually stop spawning. As a matter of fact, I know when they are going to spawn, which is really useful information. So the plan is this: let the enemies and the Grunt Thor spawn, and when they do, throw your wrench 3 times while carefully running away. We then focus our wrench power on the enemies until they are wiped off the map. Then keep throwing our wrench to the Grunt Thor, since it's the only move we can use against him, until he is at 60% lives. At that point, the next wave of enemies spawns. A wave of shooters. We kill all these enemies, so when we battle the Grunt Thor again, we don't take extra damage from random flying shots. And we prepare ourselves best for when fighting the Grunt Thor again, until it reaches 40% lives. Now this isn't the first time I made it to this point. I've actually made it to this point multiple times. But when he has 40% lives left, a wave of flyers spawn in. And they are really bad to fight. Just like in my Into the Nexus run, they would keep on ending my runs. We cannot hyperstrike them. I did that successfully for about 3 times in the 2 hours I did this fight, so that's not a reliable strategy, only a lucky accident. No, instead we have to keep throwing our wrench, and I believe they are all a 5-hit KO. They shoot very big bombs that are sometimes really hard to evade. And don't even think about ignoring them till the end of the battle, because you won't survive. Really. So we have to make them a priority, and when you finally get lucky enough to kill them all, I'd say your best chance is to keep attacking the Grunt Thor and occasionally hide behind the stone pillars. If he decides to do the run attack or the rock attack, the pillars will defend you. The difficulty shocked me because this run was really easy, and then suddenly I got stuck in this room for over 2 hours. But on the topic of difficult, we are about to reach the end of the game. Specifically the ending boss. We are fighting Emperor Nefarious in his Imperial power suit, and this fight, it's really not fun. Like really, challenging boss fights are interesting to me because they mostly rely on strategy, and we have to figure that out and implement those strategies. But this fight, it's just bullshit. While battling with only the wrench, you are just so limited in what you can do. And that means that you are going to spend hours on this platform, jumping away from easy attacks and throw our hammer for, I believe, something like 150 times. And that's not so bad, right? I mean, Into the Nexus, Neftin Prog was something like a 300 hit KO, if I remember correctly. And the Nether boss was more than 1,000 hit KO. Why is this fight awful? Well, because simply he is hard to hit. He's just too far away that you have to stand on the edge of the platform and you can fall off, making you restart from square one. But what is even more annoying than the distance is the fact that we mostly have to hit his hand. And as you can see, it's like a claw. And the only hit we can logically make is to hit his fingers, who move a lot and are easy to miss. So really, 150 hits is okay, but that will easily go up to 400 wrench throws, sometimes more. And be aware that if you were to die, we restart this process again. I literally have runs where I got him down to 30% lives just to fall off of the platform, or I believe I got him down to 12% lives before getting finished off. And we really cannot do anything else than just jumping away and keep throwing the wrench to hopefully get a lucky shot here or there. It's like, not fair. And I'm sorry that there's no complex strategy, but honestly, having him beat in 2 hours and 15 minutes was not fun anymore. I was just relieved that this bullshit was over. Yes, the last minutes got more and more tense, but that was pretty much it. You are just too limited in the capabilities of the wrench. In every Ratchet and Clank game where you attempt wrench only runs, there are bound to be spots where it's a big risk to fall into oblivion. We then take the power suit out from within, and the only thing remaining to do is defeat the Emperor using Rivet and her hammer. Now this is not so hard to do, I did it in 3 attempts. The strategy here is to wait until he has chosen a steady position that he will stay in for multiple seconds, and then you attack. Hide whenever he does whatever he does, and you should be successful. Well, that was an anticlimax, but it is refreshing to see that you can in fact beat this game with wrench only. But in retrospect, I should have done the run on the hardest difficulty. That would have made certain parts way more tense. Now, would I recommend this run? It may not seem like it maybe, but yes, it was very much fun. I had a really good time while playing this. Well, besides the ending boss maybe, I never want to do that again. Although I will maybe try the hardest difficulty wrench only in the future. I'm also interested in doing a Rift Apart run where I cannot walk or run after obtaining the Phantom Dash. So I can only move with the Phantom Dash, hover boots will be excluded either. That should be a really slow yet tactical run. Let me know if you are interested in that. This has been yet another obscure video game run, so until next time I'd say, take care.